An architect, painter, and sculptor, Tony Smith is considered to be a pioneer figure in American minimalist sculpture. Anthony Peter Smith was born on September 23, 1912, in South Orange, New Jersey. His grandfather and namesake A.P. Smith founded a municipal waterworks factory in nearby East Orange. The young Smith would visit the factory often, fascinated by the machinery and the fabrication process. In his early 20s, Smith attended the Art Students League of New York, studying painting, drawing, and anatomy. Soon, a few years later, in mid-1930s, he moved to Chicago to study at the New Bauhaus in Chicago, all while working in the offices of Frank Lloyd Wright. Wright being an extreme American influential figure in architecture. Although Smith did receive several prominent commissions, Smith eventually became disillusioned with the business and returned to New York to focus on his art. In New York, during the 1940s and 1950s, Smith continued to paint, befriending the abstract expressionist artists Barnett Newman, Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, and Clifford Still. Here is where he began to experiment with simple, three-dimensional geometric shapes, combining and then enlarging them to create a drama through scale. While the mock-ups were often made of cardboard or wood, the final work was envisioned in steel. After 2 decades and in his 50s, Smith decided to leave the architectural field and painting to move on to a new and different domain, sculpture. The forms that he conjured up tended to be, on the whole, to be slightly if not markedly disquieting. They were humankind's unanswerable uncertainties about things larger than in itself. Those mysteries Smith addressed were those of nature and the spirit. The manner in which he addressed these forms of life were through his methodical way of working in the studio. Smith was probably influenced by his architectural experience along with his parallel interests in mathematics and science. He was distinguished for utilizing geometric figures and blowing up their proportion. This practice of his called for attention, the work's physical size and its relationship to the viewer. And although many minimalists believed sculpture had to be understood in a physical and psychological era just as Smith did, he could in turn not have been more different from those of his minimalist and New York school peers. He was grouped with the minimalists in the 1960s, but he wasn't really of that generation. He entitled all his works, unlike many of the 1960s sculptors, with evocative and often playful titles. He wanted people to bring associations to his sculptures and to have a subjective experience. Some of his sculptures, that of which offered this minimalist approach, a symbolic, reductive, abstract approach, were Moondog, Grasshopper, Smoke, Light Up, She Who Must Be Obeyed, Smog, The Fourth Sign, Wandering Rocks, Source, Throwback 1 out of 3, and Die. These sculptures all were conceived through an endless use of octahedrons, tetrahedrons, rhomboids, and utilizing further geometric figures. Overall, Smith offered a compelling impression of consistency with his artworks. He merged architecture, painting, sculpture into one colossal entity of expression. Smith, an American minimalist sculptor, overall renowned for possessing ideologies that originated on a micro realm and moved onto a broader consciousness. His fascination with cells and the process of division, mitosis, and how he incorporated that fascination into his sculptures, along with geometry, is of extreme equivalence. His geometric figures allude to an ephemeral state of coexisting with not just time, but space as well. His work could generate an infinity of associations, which would vary with the experiences of the viewer. His sculptures changed dramatically from every angle of viewing because of its great scale and complexity. They seemed animated and static at the same time, particularly as the viewer walked around them. Overall, all his sculptures were produced, as he stated at times, by his own personal feeling that all sculptures were on the edge of dreams. His works hinted a special form of witticism, With startling tilts from certain viewpoints, his sculptures also gave an impression of instability, and at times they served as a memento mori.